recommended or presented to them is going to be adequate. So I don't know if you're aware, if you are a corporate entity, especially in financial services space, the composition of your board, there are specific requirements. You just can't pick anyone. In the past, in the Bahamas, this used to happen, of course. He's my friend, this other person, we all sit on the board. That can't happen anymore. So most boards now have to have an audit committee. And when you look, I actually did a comparison. I did a presentation, did a comparison of Commonwealth Bank for the board actually, to show their annual report when they first started, when they first went public, and look at the annual report today. So the annual report they had initially didn't speak to anything about governance, didn't talk about internal controls, didn't talk about all these board committees. It just said, just generally these are the board members, had their profiles by, and maybe a little spiel. In the annual report today, if you look at it, there's at least 10 pages to talk about the governance structure. Shows a chart to say who reporting to who on the board, has for each board committee what their mandate is, from AML, CFT to financial reporting to XYZ is explicit now. The risk structure is specifically discussed in the annual report. So the board now, it is quite clear that they need to have comfort. It's also required for most boards in the Bahamas to have an accounting professional or someone with a financial background to assess financial statements, someone who has an appreciation of risk. They also, in most cases, want a non-executive director in place. And where you have boards that are foreign, you want to, I think they also have to, where you need a Bahamian presence or a non-executive that is local. So all these things have come about because a lot of emphasis, more emphasis is given to governance, risk management, as well as board responsibility. So you have the famous cases in the past, Enron, Societe Generale, HSBC, which they talk about in your book, Standard Chartered Bank, which they talk about in your material, Barron's Bank. In every single instance, there were board issues. Things that happened, the board was just not aware of whether it was misinformation or whatever. They were disconnected from the organizations they were mandated to oversee. And in some jurisdictions, like it says, they have rules and obligations for boards. So in our jurisdiction, we, like I said, we do have rules around board responsibility. Most boards in the Bahamas, and I am thinking of one, a large insurance, and they actually send their board members to a 6-week course in the UK to prepare them to be a board member. So you just can't walk on and, okay, I'm a board. When I was at Commonwealth Bank, they have a retreat and a training they do every year for board members, a 3-day retreat, and there people come in, talk about the issues, educate board members. Because if you're someone, they're on the board, and I could say this because this is public. So on Commonwealth Bank, the person for a long time who was the chair was Rupert Roberts from Super Value. Now, he in the food business, he on the board of a financial services entity. That's a whole different thing. Now, of course, he has high business acumen because he's a successful businessman, but still, there are things that he may be responsible for as a board member that you could not know by running a food store business. It's just two different things. So you need to educate board members where there are deficiencies. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and they're on Bank of the Bahamas board, and I said, oh, how you got on that board? And he said he was at the meeting, the HEM, and they needed someone who had minority interests and a regular person to be on the board, and he was at the meeting, and there were two of them that offered themselves. The other person was disqualified, I think, because I can't remember the reason. But he said that's how he ended up on Bank of Bahamas board. So it was nothing to do with, oh, someone appointed me, but because they needed, as per their charter, I assume that they needed this person who was a regular person, had minority interest. No, but I mean, so it is what required. In the past, and those here who have been around a while to tell you, and I remember working for private banks, when they have these companies, they set up a trust, everybody's director, everybody's this and that. But that is not the feeling today. Because even on some of those companies you set up for clients, all that stuff could impact you. And I know about being who had to go to the U.S. to testify in cases regarding clients or had liabilities. So you don't, when they say they have this nominee company and these nominees, I don't put me on nothing. I will understand what you're doing. But that used to be very common, and people never bothered about it. But now, you have rules and obligations for boards, and like I say, in the Bahamas, this is no different. So this is something that you need to be aware of if you are a board member. Anyone here serves on a board? So this also applies to nonprofit, for those who serve on nonprofit, because we have legislation that is soon to be passed for nonprofit, and they get them at the same thing. Because I looked at it with regard to the church where I go, and you have to sit down and have some discussion, because they're asking for people who give over a certain amount to your church that you have to declare it. So that means as a church, you've got to track, one, who given what, and who over that threshold, you got to have KYC on this person. So if you're on the board, even of a church, then you got to be thinking about this, because you could have liability. So, where there's Red Cross, Cancer Society, Hans Hunger, all of them now have to think about this sort of thing. So if you are on a board, certain things you don't want to happen, and you want to avoid. So some of the things you want to avoid is not managing AML CFT risk effectively. You don't want to be in a position where you're not complying with regulations and legal requirements. You don't want to be in a position where you have breaches, financial sanctions because of non-compliance or because money laundering or terrorism financing occurred. You want to keep abreast, because when you don't keep abreast of external factors, it could damage you, as well as reputational damage as a result of AML CFT failure. So you are, if you're on the board, you are ultimately responsible for any risk control failures. And so most boards now have to approve, or should if they don't, but I've seen it in practice. They're the persons who approve who the person is for head of compliance, head of risk, as well as head of internal audit, because they are all control positions. And they approve it because they need to know and who the MLRO is, because they need to understand that person has the competence to provide them with information relevant to these things. Because no one sitting on the board can sit down and come up with this stuff. They have to rely on the persons in the organization to give them assurance, to provide management information, provide documentation, as well as keep them abreast of what's going on. So in organizations now in the Bahamas, whoever is sitting in the compliance MLRO seat, or in some cases internal audit, would tell the board what changes are coming down to central bank, how does this impact your institution? They expect that to be reported during the board meetings. Expect you to provide that, as well as tell them. I remember doing compliance, I used to produce a list of where we might have high-risk people or where we might have, dodge a bullet. People on high-risk lists because they need to be aware and sign off. And in that institution, they used to sign off on those minutes to say that they are aware. And any contentious clients, they needed to understand, and they had me explain how we managing that risk. So what are we doing different? How am I monitoring? How am I making sure they get comfort that, yeah, okay, that's enough? Or should we let them re-release this client? Because that's a consideration. So you see in our environment that a lot of the retail banks just take the position that, for example, we're not going to have the numbers before. We're just not going to go there. And that's a board decision. That's not a low-level decision. So it's important to, number one, for the compliance team to provide the board with accurate, relevant, and timely information. Yes? Mm-hmm. But not central bank has to approve the person that you appoint for compliance, and they have to approve them, and they've denied people before. And they also, when they do an inspection, they have an interview with the person who's in the chair to get a comfort with whether that person, they feel that that person can execute. So this when I was in a private institution, they had a foreign person as compliance, and they moved them based on central bank saying to them, that is not the appropriate person. And I ended up being the compliance. And when they came in for follow-up, they actually scheduled an interview with me, and they asked me questions like, do you think you could stand up to the board or the managing director in this organization if you found a breach? And they had a series of questions like that. And they asked me, what is my plan? And am I aware of their report that was issued regarding the institution and the action plan that was agreed? So, I mean, the great thing in that scenario, I was aware, I was a part of what their plan was, remediation. But I do know of organizations where that conversation is being had, reports are issued, and the compliance person is not in the room. I have seen that. When I sat in my other chair as internal audit, I've seen that. Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I've seen it, and when that happened, I know where I was involved in that happened. As my role is internal audit, because I am assessing controls and risk, I communicated to the board committee to which I reported, as well as the executive management, that it's not appropriate for compliance not to be there, and they need to be sitting in the room. And they still, and this was not positive, but they still said, okay, Jackie, yes, they should sit in the room, but we want you to watch what they're doing. Because basically we don't have the confidence. And then later on, after Central Bank had a review, we had a meeting. Compliance wasn't in the meeting, but we had a meeting about whether that person was appropriate based on some of the feedback from Central Bank. Because see, the other thing to keep in mind, right? If I start off a business and we're small and we have like 30, 40 people, and you compliant, Central Bank could approve you and everything is good, you know. But if you merge or you grow and now you have 500 people, you might not be appropriate anymore, right? But we just haven't got to deal with that. And from a organization, operational side, culture side, and I would say, you know, tenure versus talent versus that, that's a little tricky. Because, you know, being in the Bahamas, that's a perception. Y'all bring this new person on top of me. I was doing it for 30 years. I was dealing with all the problems, and now you bring this person, not realizing that now we're in a different environment, technical matters. And I've seen that. I saw a situation, someone worked their way up, right? No paper, except high school. And now they are a VP. And they had to do something where they put them in a program or something to get, like, you know, the executive MBA, whatever. That, to me, could be tricky. Because this person, you know, maybe in their 50s or whatever, and you are putting that on them because now they have what you call business, now they are incompetent for the position requirements today. So 20 years ago, you were competent. Now you are incompetent because we have all this kind of stuff. Can you handle it? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, you saying that, you saying that, you saying that.
If you are
You saying that.
I mean, if you keeping up with the clients and you're trying to
And I have 2, 3 children, and I in the bank all the time, and I am reliable. And every hurricane, I sitting in the office with you, and I am your go-to person, and I know those clients back to front. Listen, real life is a serious thing. So, and you take out the wrong person at top organization, you could change the culture and the tone, right? Because that one might be the person everybody likes and could influence everyone. They are what they call unofficial leader. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say it's important how you communicate and make sure everyone is sensitive to these things. And so that's why in organizations too, you see them enforcing stuff like retirement, and they offer an early retirement because this is a way to move people along, to put more technical people in those things. Because even for me, I'm not going to be dishonest about it. It is challenging sometimes. I sat in a meeting and they were talking about, and I said, what is this now? Like I had to go back, do some research, get my understanding around the topic, because it just was something new that I just didn't know. So if you are not willing to do that, then it can be a hard road in this environment. If you want to be in financial services, I know accountants who tell me, who've been around a long time, they say this is why I retired, because the rules now we have in accounting are just crazy. So, you know, I don't do audits. I don't want to do audits. I give advice on risk and different things, but it is a lot. And anyone doing any of these, any profession now, I think it's a lot. So you really have to make sure you are always equipping yourself. What you're doing here is great. But that's what it is. You know, that's just what it is. Um, so again, senior management, you talk about the board, senior management is part of this. And they are even closer to the board because they are dealing with the day-to-day management. So their responsibilities must be clearly defined. They could be personally liable. And you have examples in the UK through the Financial Conduct Authority, where in the UK, and this is in your material, they actually provide guidance, relating to senior management regime, function, certification, conduct rules. So a lot of these positions now, and I know central bank is no different. If you are, and then they had this for a while, but I think they even beefed it up more now. If you have any senior position, so if you are a senior manager and up, you have to go to central bank. For sure, vice president, assistant vice president, deputy vice president, that's an automatic central bank has to approve that person. Um, so they have rules around that, and of course, we have fit and proper guidelines for MLRO. And I think there's another position, they have fit and proper guidelines. So control positions is even more requirements. So when you're done doing this now for Securities Commission, because I'm going to serve compliance for a brokerage place, you got to produce all your credentialing, police certificate, all of that stuff, right? So they've hired me, but they still gotta do that to make sure that I meet these requirements. And when I was talking to the guy, someone in the UK, he actually said to me, he said, it's very important for us to have persons that could pass or could meet the requirements. Because that has become the issue now. So again, you doing this course is great. I tell people who not even want to be in compliance, but can be a senior position, do it. Because it helps and it gives the regulator confidence. You have an appreciation for controls and risk as well as AML CFT. And then, of course, legislation will impose obligations. So your material speaks a lot about this in more detail, but this is very much critical in our environment as well. So these are some of the responsibilities that senior management has to do with AML CFT. So one is engage. So they need to ensure all employees are engaged. They buy into the policy. They understand why it's important and relevant. In organizations, I know I've been in, when the president or the CEO or managing director stands up in a meeting and says, this is what we're doing. This is why we want to make sure we follow the laws of the Bahamas, anti-money laundering, all these rules, we will respect it. You know already, the tone is there from the top. So you want all staff members to be involved. And you also could have this happen through training and just general awareness. I tell people you could affect it just by walking around the office. Some people stay in their office a lot. I tell my colleagues all the time, don't always be in the office. Awareness don't happen like that. Assurance. So you want to have assurance that the system is working well, and that's what you'll get from the compliance team. They should be giving you reports. They should be doing their own testing and reporting to senior management. How are we doing? Are people following the rules? Are we detecting any issues? Are we remediating them? Leadership. So, of course, leadership is an important part of organizational culture. So you want to lead and lead in an environment where controls are respected, policy is followed, and people understand what they're responsible for. Strategic AML CFT approach. So you need to be in close contact with the MLRO compliance officer. It shouldn't be you talking to, if you're the president, managing director, you shouldn't have a third party between you and them. You should be able, that MLRO should be able to come to you, hey, this happened, hey, whatever. Not for every little thing, but for things that are strategic to the organization. So you're not sending this person an email or a memo that they might not read right away, but you could actually pick up the phone. This is an urgent matter, X, Y, Z. Quality assurance. So normally organizations, especially those that have internal audit, would have independent review to make sure the AML CFT approach is adequate and is responsive. So For most organizations, especially those who internal audit, would have part of their review to review the compliance team, review the AML framework. And the last thing is risk-based. So senior management should always be taking a risk-based approach because we can't look at everything, but we need to understand the risks that our business face, especially with regard to AML, CFT, and make sure that we are responding and ask the questions, what are we doing here? This happened in the community. Have we addressed the same risk because we also face that risk in our business? So we talked about the board. We talked about senior management. And now you have the actual compliance function, the team. So the team, the compliance team is the core of the risk framework. You are the experts. You should be the ones everyone comes to consult. They shouldn't have to go and call an attorney outside and what you think. They should be talking to you. And the board is going to rely on the compliance team to design, implement, and test the framework. So this piece here, this testing, people forget this little piece here, but that's important. Because I could put 100 policies in place and then find out after something blow up, you know that never used to work. And then sometimes you stop and say, it's fine here, I don't know why they did that, because I never worked for when they do that. So that's why you need to test it, to make sure it is effective, it makes sense, and is doing what we intended it to do. With what? Testing. So, and this is from we had a system as an institution, a system that used to review checks, like the AML, that AML layer that used to review all the transactions. And this system was given results that said, oh, they'll tell you if you write checks, if you don't write checks in order, right? So you go 1, 2, 3, and if it have a gap, it'll report it. It'll report it if you are an elderly person and you do a withdrawal on your account of a certain amount. It'll have all those thresholds in it, and it gives you a report. Right? So one way to test if the system works is if I put bad data in the system. I just put something that should have a red flag to see, okay, does this work? So there's this client that I saw on paper, and I said, I must see the alerts that come up for this client. Nothing came up for this client. I said, what? So when I looked at the client and I looked at the parameters that were put in, they were put so wide that they would never hit a threshold. Right? And some of the information was missing for the entity, so the system couldn't work in the way it was designed. So when I sat down with operations and people, they said, oh, yeah, we put that like that because, or the persons on the ground set up like that because they were waiting for other information and they didn't want to get a bunch of alerts, and they just set it up like that. So what we recommended, what we did, is put these accounts in a category that are incomplete. So they always flag and they high risk and they come up on a report so we can monitor what y'all have sitting out there that y'all not dealing with. But people do these things. We also have to put controls in the system where someone at a higher level releasing the account and saying yes, it's approved, have to approve or be the one to bypass accounts that are incomplete, that are not consistent with what in the file, especially over a certain threshold. Because why this account struck me because the person opened it for like $99,000 with a check from another bank, and I contacted the bank and say, why y'all losing a client like this? And they said, well, I can tell you off the record, you don't want them. So then I was trying to figure out why it didn't flag in our system. So when you find these things out through testing, then you could correct some of the gaps, and you could protect people from themselves, because people get busy, and when they get busy or someone interrupt them or something happens, they figure out ways around the system to put it on pause till they come back, and they never come back, right? And unfortunately, that account that you need to come back to could be the blow up one. And I've seen that many times. Court matter, that's the same case there. Orders on my desk, they send it to me. Compliance, you see the emails, compliance saying, y'all need to send this other information, blah, blah, blah. And they saying, yeah, we was waiting on the branch. It's taking so long. Next thing I see, police sent an order for this. I said, did y'all report this? You haven't big names, did y'all report? Oh, yeah, no, nothing. We saw this irregularity. We done in the wrong. Because you see the irregularity. I said, did y'all do STR? No. Because we was waiting on information from this person. And get on this pile. And see, that's where you got to test. Because if you don't test, then you design, implement it pretty, it look good, read it. You know, I always tell people, policy is always pretty. You could read it, it sounds good. People take from these type of material, write their policy, but does it actually work? So that's where you really have to be on top of it. So the board also going to rely on this compliance team to provide oversight that and reassurance that this is working as expected. So one of the things central bank does now when they do inspections, they ask compliance, do you do testing? And they expect you to do testing as compliance. So you should have a program where you go around and you test samples of accounts and you say, have you done all these pieces right? So this is something now that's more formalized within our system. You should have a role in management of, and this is the compliance team of management of the risk. And this AML CFT should be a subsection of the compliance function. So this assumes that you have like 4 or 5 people, and then this 1 or 2 people deal with AML CFT, or how many it is for that. Most organizations, there's 2 people or 1 person. So it's no subset, right? So that's something that in our environment, because we're small, this sometimes is a challenge right here. Sometimes it's a challenge because compliance don't even sit in some organizations on management or executive management. Because what they call the position is say like head of compliance. They don't say senior manager or VP or something, they just say head of compliance. So we're not really sure where that falls, but they're not in the meetings that they need to be in. Okay? So you gotta have a role in how that risk is managed, because if you're not reporting to the board, you're not doing these things, then you're not gonna be effective in that manner. No, you could test manual. If I come into your organization, I don't even have to touch a piece of paper, you know. If I walk into a compliance department and I said, oh, I want to speak to the head or the senior person compliance, I walk in the office and all I see files on the ground, I already know it's a problem. I don't touch something. Because if files on the ground, that's already a risk to me. Because I could take some of that file. And if I watch you walk out that room, and that door not closed, man, we're really a problem. And then if you start telling me stuff like, oh, well, you know, I gotta go to this meeting and I'm supposed to review this, and I could just look at emails and see communication between you and the top and reports, and I said, oh, could I see your last 5 reports you did? Well, I'm working on this one and this one, we didn't finish all the pieces, and really a problem. Because then information is not timely, it probably isn't accurate, there probably are gaps. If you don't have statistics and control over your data, and not that that person is a bad person, you can just be, and we can talk about this MLRO and different things, you might just not be well resourced and don't have the tools. So I tell people a lot of times it's not whether it's manual or technology, is being working smart, have an organized system that's tailored to your business and being well resourced. Because I watch organizations produce 20 reports and nobody reads. But if they produce one that's effective, they're better off. You see, but sometimes we get caught up in, I always ask the question, why are we doing this report again? All we've been doing this, like, from when I said, again, why are we doing this? Like, what do y'all use on this report? So if you can't tell me, we could stop doing this today. So that's some of what you testing too. Like, what is the reporting that is going up to executive management? If it isn't effective, stop doing it. But I find, especially as family, you scared to change things. And I like to, I have been different places working. That's the first thing I don't change things right away. I like to get an understanding. So I always ask why. And they'll explain. I said, okay. Then I look at some for this and that report, and if I tweak it a little bit, I can put the two together. I just got to convince the readers you're getting the same thing, and they're good. You know how much time I save? People spend hours on reports that nobody reads, and it's not effective, and the information by the time the meeting comes is dated. So might as well do something. Once, like we talked about internal and external considerations, once it meets all central bank requirements or your regulator with others, and you're meeting all the requirements internally, well, if you could ditch 5 and you end up with 2, you're better off. So I believe in questioning things, and that's what testing is doing as well, questioning. So any environment you're in, you could test, and you could take a sample, or you could take 1 or 2 and say, and this is what compliance people do. They'll say, I can take 2 high-risk accounts, I want to file, they review it in detail. That's what trust reviews are. Review it in detail. Let me understand the structure. Is this appropriate for this client? And do a stand back look, and you will be surprised. You'll be able to identify really good work, talented people, as well as stuff that we shouldn't have done, that we need to fix. So the Basel Committee has a document. If you Google this, you will find it. Compliance and compliance function in banks. And they actually say a bank should organize its compliance function, set priorities for management, its compliance risk. So we've talked about risk already, risk appetite, in a way that is consistent with its own risk management strategy and structures. So it's telling us they're ready. This should be tailored to you. Compliance function, it should be independent and sufficiently resourced. Its responsibilities should be clearly specified. That means you should have job description. That means the compliance function should be in policy. So if I did a review of a compliance function, that's what I would want to see. It should be in policy. This is the compliance function. This is who they report to. As well, its activities should be subject to periodic and independent review by the internal audit function. So that's Basel that's saying that. So if you are a entity, this is what it should look like. And all of that, of course, should be documented. So we have the board, senior management, the actual compliance team. So these are the other roles. So AML-CFT is a team effort to combat, to ensure awareness, effectiveness. So we need all other functions involved: HR, legal and compliance, generally, risk management, operations, internal audit. You have audit, financial advisory service, so that'll be your external auditors, legal counsel, vendors, suppliers, and third parties are also critical. They are for the Bahamas, especially if you're a large entity. This is critical because your vendors, suppliers are the third parties. The third party is the correspondent bank. Third party is your credit card provider if you are a financial institution. If you are an insurance person, that might be your reinsurer. So this is also IT. So if my AML, CFT system, if I have a system in place, it's fully automated, and my supplier, I didn't know and I didn't check their compliance and to check that they have a BCP plan in place, and they headquartered in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico went down in the last hurricane, then my system support go down just like that. So what's my plan? So I need to make sure that everybody, including my vendors, they have policies in place. So this is something else that central bank has put a lot of emphasis on. Um, Third-party arrangements and making sure that you have a risk policy with regard to them. There's an ongoing review of your significant third-party interest, as well as in some cases where it's required that those covenants, that you are actually adhering to them. So in large organizations, you can, and this also applies where you use third parties for compliance, certain compliance pieces. So if I use an introducer and I say that I waive certain pieces because you are licensed in the Bahamas by Compliance Commission, so I believe you are doing AML, so we only doing this. You have the right as third as the principal to go to their offices and confirm that they are doing what they say they're doing. That should be in your agreement with them. So it's important that that last one, I think a lot of people take it for granted, but it's quite critical. As well as people who have your client information offshore. We're supposed to be protecting client data. You had all this Wells Fargo, all these other breaches. Data security, cyber security is huge. Um, and you also want to make sure that your client information is protected, because people who do illicit things like money laundering, they will figure out who on your book so they can target them. So third parties must also be on board or have the same thinking as you. So I don't know if persons have any questions at this point. So I had a little question here. So you're a director of a fund management company. So this a director of fund management company ignores a control which prohibits the transfer of redemption monies to any person other than the investor. By transferring funds to a cooperated third party at the request of the investor. So they did something, they ignored a control, and they shouldn't have transferred money to a third party, although it's cooperated. And so they've broken this rule now. So is the AML CFT compliance department responsible? When this happened. So,
because the transaction taking place doesn't take place within compliance scope. Compliance, you likely will see the results of this after the fact. So, provided all of the training policies and procedures are in place for the fund office and operations and so forth, then I would say that compliance should pick up on it out of the gate.
first of all, this is a senior person. This is a senior person. This is a director.
They would have signed off on it, right? So they would have it. And if you're following the trend that if you have a good working team with director, senior management, CML team, and other persons within that are aware of the policies, then when that director presents this transfer to that department, it's a key. If those persons have been trained out, the rest
Okay.
For instance, for the file that we see, but which account should these funds be sent back to?
So do people do that in practice?
I know when I was in banking,
Not if it's a direct.
Not if it's a direct.
You'll never know.
That's why it's, trust me.
I'll
Not
retract.
fresh past
The director,
But just on that,
Mhm.
the fact that it's a director signing off on this,
Mhm.
I'll retract my comments.
No, but I think your comments are valid, but
No,
go ahead.
But now that I'm thinking of the seniority level that this is going to for approval, I'm going to assume in all of my experience before it gets there, compliance has to have seen it. Even in situations that I've seen situations where the CEO is like, go ahead, let's send this $1 million out to so for this high profile client, but the operations department is not executing based on the CEO's signature because this
You
is
need
not his
some other,
role.
yeah, you need other people.
And they want to make sure compliance is aware of this and the other relevant persons who do the business team is aware.
also, we have to go back to the mandates as far as the organization, because if a director can legally act on his own, does he have
So you think people can go back to the Monday? I'm saying should. I'm saying be in practice now.
in practical, I've seen both sides where for persons who are conscientious, right? I'm going to have both. There are some people who are intimidated because, oh, this is the senior, this is the director, and they just get all sorry and, oh, sign up, let's send this money. No, because at the end of the day, even though you ought to have known better, you need to take that particular case and escalate it to them, your senior person, and say, this is what the policy says. I know this is the director, but this is what the policy says. Now, y'all will sign off on it. But I put my note to say policy says blah blah blah. And whoever wants to execute it will reach a policy then when it goes south, you know, because I would have brought it to your attention and John Henry on it and whoever signing off. I know in past where things
Suppose you were aware of it, you didn't sign, but you knew that it happened. What would you do? If you know that this happened, you didn't sign because they went to someone else, but you saw that it was processed, right? Yeah, after the fact. What would you do?
responsibility is to report it.
Listen, to be honest, it's all like I listen to this, this is theoretical.
That's theoretical.
Yeah. Because I know people who say
Banking department is 15 of us.
I know people that say I didn't see it.
Again, and so and so.
Yeah.
Listen,
Nobody
that's the European desk. I am in the Latin desk. I ain't got time for that over there.
Okay.
I get myself to that.
As the compliance, one of the questions you'll ask, the question is whether or not you are in that position is prepared or able to stand up to senior management. And in looking at all of the rules, it indicates that the compliance officer is valuable. It doesn't say in all the other other rules that those persons are held liable. And so being in the position where I'll be in that position of being liable, I definitely will make sure that the report is done, whether it be, because even though it's the same organization that I work with, but even though it's a director, it's important that the report is made because at the end of the day, the compliance person is liable.
Well, they'll be responsible for the failure. I mean, they could be, that's the question here, are they responsible for the failure?
Well, it directly says that the director ignored the control, so the control was already in place. And
So maybe the control wasn't effective. Maybe it wasn't tested.
I mean,
Probably. Probably.
But you always
or not. You can't say if it was tested or not based on that. You can say, okay, that's one scenario. But if you're reading into it the way I'm reading into it, where he's aware of the controls, but he may, for whatever reason, outside influence, oh, we got together, I need this done, blah, blah, blah. We know this stuff happens.
say cooperated third party. Client called me and say, I want you, this my money, this my money. I want you to pay to this third party. I didn't ask you, I didn't really ask you if you have rules in your bind that say it should be done. But I mean, that's another powerful force. But I mean, I pose this question because I just want to demonstrate how complex these things could be. And that, number one, when you start, it's important to get an understanding and definitely do an investigation. So you could get understanding as to what surrounded this. Yes. Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
transfer. I'm always very skeptical when a client, wants you to transfer to a third party and you can't.
Suppose a director come to you and this is the senior person in the room in the organization if you're small and say, I need you to do this. And that person is intimidating, rude, and they like they threaten to stop. I could tell you a case like right now I'm talking to someone who's looking for a job because they cannot deal with it. And they said that they have told their boss that, they're not doing it, they'd rather go home. Now, other people do it. No, even if they send even if they send you an email, there are people who are there's also a question of, and that's why I say it's important to get understanding, and of course we'll need more information on what's here. But you have to understand too, sometimes you might be just working for an unethical organization and you gotta make a personal choice. Right? So that's something to actually consider in this scenario as well. Because it could be a legitimate thing that the director might be succumbing to pressure, this might be the biggest client, what have you, and that this might have been something done before by someone in the past when the policy didn't exist, because it might be a new policy. So that's why I say it's important to get an understanding. But a couple of things, and there's core principles that every the board and senior management will always have responsibility, no matter what happened. Don't care who fault it is. You got to clean it up. You got to fix it. You got to make it right. And AML compliance department, they're responsible for the system in place. And clearly, there's a breach. You want to understand the breach. You want to make sure it doesn't reoccur, and you want to address it right away in an effective manner that sends a message that this is not acceptable. Right? You cannot physically be a part of every transaction, because if you're risk-based, there are transactions that might not be within your purview or threshold. But there are things that could still happen, and people do things, and you may find out after the fact, but you want to ensure that your system is working effectively. And breaches like that will signal that, yes, maybe we need to do it a different way, or this is how we're going to have to check that person, or this is going to be a way people could anonymously report, because that's something that Central Bank also emphasizes in hotlines, where people could report things, where they would be free from sanction or any type of retaliation. That's why that's very important, where they could whistleblow and don't suffer damage. Because not everybody could stand up, because some people get mortgage insurance and school and things. So it isn't always that easy. I can be straight with you. I've seen it, and people will start crying and say, I can't do that because X, Y, Z, and I need this job and I don't want no problem, and they just ask me. See, you think it, but I'm telling you this real life.
But I'd rather lose the job, buddy.
Man, I don't know, because you might be on the street with your children, and that is not simple.
I'd rather lose the job.
The thought came to mind. I've been in a circumstance where it was between a private banker and the trust department, and money's fraudulently. And of course, the first thing is who sent it, who approved it.
Yeah, because they want to hang this on. They want to hang somebody.
And I had a certain level of signatory, and they said, "Oh, Valentino signed off
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Now, this was not in my,
Mhm.
as you, the word you used, purview,
Yeah, yeah.
one of my clients on my team and so forth, but they came to me because they needed a certain level of signatory. Now, I'm only signing based on our procedures and policies, the understanding that the two signatories that are on this before me have done all the due diligence. I don't need to go and check the file physically myself and do all of these other things because based on our policies and procedures, them signing in this their capacity, they've done all of this. So I'm now putting confidence in their role, and that's why it's now coming to my level.
And you say a critical thing there, and I want people to miss it. That is defined in policy,
Exactly.
right? And that's critical because I've seen in situations and my role as internal audit, and I ask people and I look at account opening documentation, and 4 people sign off on it at the back, and I go to each one of those people separately. What you signing for? If you tell me what you signed when you review this document, well, how come you sign it? And people, they can't tell me. Some people cannot say. They saying, "Well, I check everything." I say, "Well, why would you check everything? Does the policy require you to check everything?" No, but I check everything because see these people in here, they'll do this and that, and I'll get blamed, right? No, but this is real. So that's why it's important for you in your role to understand what your response and for them to be clearly defined. Now, it doesn't say that if you have suspicion or if you have concern, but if this is a normal course, this is something that happens all the time in terms of the threshold amounts, people who sign, nothing that would have caused raise red flags, and you within your authority, I can't do nothing to you, right? And that's why I tell people policy protects you. Job description is policy. Policy protects you.
But where people started fretting, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't concerned. I said, no. They came to me and asked why did I sign? I said because my role demands a certain signature, but that I'm confident in signing because they've already done this. So if that's not done, we need to take that up with this private banker. And of course, you have the private banker and the trust officer pointing fingers at each other and all of that kind of stuff. But I wasn't concerned. And then I had a second scenario at a new bank that I went to, and they didn't have the procedures and the policies in place. And so, because I was responsible for executing and my staff to be responsible, I had to implement those quickly.
Exactly.
Because I didn't want to be held accountable for every and any error that happened by this team. When my signature goes on it, I want it to be because you did your job. I'm not over Valentino side.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Valentino.
Exactly.
So immediately I got with compliance and
I'd say we need to document the process.
This needs to get done.
And that's putting in systems. So
I went to a conference about 3 weeks ago, and one of the main issues was this whole whistleblowing in terms of money laundering. One of the things that I noticed, particularly in the U.S., the Securities Commission or whatever the regulator is, there is an infrastructure that's in place that facilitates whistleblowing. And we don't have the same type of infrastructure here. If you whistleblow, there are certain protections that are placed that you can get rewards or awards from various regulators and things of that nature. And we're only going to be able to really get to the point we need to get to if we have those same types of regulations.
But I would say there's lobbying in place. I know the Bahamas Compliance Association is lobbying to protect compliance officers. They've been doing that a long time, and they still haven't gotten it within guidelines or laws, what have you. But that's something I know they've been lobbying for. But central bank, with these employee helplines, hotlines, customer complaints, that is part of the international pressure to demonstrate that there are avenues for persons to report. Unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, unfortunately in our system, because of our judicial system and the slowness of the response and sometimes the timeline, there are very little incentives to do things like that because your recourse could potentially happen, but when? could be so detrimental to your livelihood. It's not worth it. So what you find people do is if they realize they're in those environments, they just leave. And I think in our environment right now, that tends to be the response until there is a remedy, like just like you suggested in the U.S., where they're very litigious, and we know that you are given incentives to do these things. But I'm sure that'll come with time. So you raised all the points that were important, and the last one is that each employee is responsible for complying with rules as well. Everyone that touches a document that if this is not right, I'm aware, I have the knowledge, I have the skill, this is not right, I need to stand up and say this is incorrect. Or question, and you don't have to accuse someone. I always say to people, I don't have to accuse you. I could just raise it and say, are you certain this is right? Because X, Y, and Z, and they say yes. Then maybe let me go to someone else who is like the unofficial enforcer, because they always have one in organization, and say, hey, I am doing this. I'm not sure this is right. Let me know, because I want to do it correctly. I've had people come to me like that. Jackie, I saw this. I don't know if I should be doing this. What you think? Really what they saying, I want you to do something, right? And I don't mind, because I'm going to go. I'm not going to call your name. Oh, I saw this transaction. What y'all doing? And I can address it. So when you identify people like that in your organization, it's important because they could be an advocate as well as someone who could enforce good practice. And that's why the compliance officer is so important, the MLRO, because you need to know that you could rely on them. If you have someone who is weak, you is already a fail. Right? So the compliance officer, and this is the last thing we're covering today, they have responsibility, of course, of receiving, evaluating, processing, looking at STRs. Their role is internationally recognized, so in all of the guidance from Basel, FATF, they are internationally recognized as a role that should be in place, and sometimes combined with the compliance, like I said, in small organizations especially, it's the same person. Large organizations tend to separate it, and this should be, you should be playing an active role in the systems and control framework of your organization. So you should be a key player. I know that isn't always the case, but that is the ideal. Again, the MLRO should be an approved person. So just like in the Bahamas, you have to be registered, you have to be approved by central bank, and in the case of the Bahamas, that definitely is the case. And we have fit and proper guidelines here on which you are evaluated. So I think in the fit and proper guidelines, it also speaks to qualifications, background, experience, and they evaluated, the regulator evaluates it to make sure that you are appropriate. So when you actually, the company, and you got to select someone, because sometimes this happens, you don't hire from outside, but sometimes you may select someone within your organization. So whether it's internal or external, you must look at what the scope of the role is. What is going to be under their responsibility. So once you understand the scope, and we talked about it at the beginning, the diversity, scale, size, all of this, of the organization complexity, then you need to understand what skills are required. So you should have job description, then MLRO, not MLRO, then job description. It's in the case where someone say, Jackie, write a job description. You just need MLRO, right? So you don't want that. You want where they understand what is required, and they have all the skills, qualifications, background, and then you aim to select the appropriate person. So, an effective MLRO, some of the things that they are going to be able to do if they are effective, of course, receive STRs, evaluate them, determine whether they have merit or support, and they should be reported externally. So this here Doesn't mean that you can't consult, but you're supposed to have your own mind. And to me, this means that you should have a position, not what you think. Because you got to go to someone higher because you don't have the confidence, but you have enough confidence. This is my position. So I might consult someone to say, I am thinking this, right? Give me your perspective. You think if this transaction happened like this, what's the impact? And they may give me a different perspective, which I could also use, but I still got to make that decision, right? You file disclosures, you're the main contact for law enforcement, and you act autonomously. So you should be free from bias or influence of people with other agendas, and you should have a good relationship with your regulator. If you can't call them up or you don't know people there, then you need to start working on that relationship. So some other things, again, we're talking about the STRs. You should be doing ongoing training. That's continuing professional development. You should be aware of trends and typologies. So things that are happening out there in the market. You should be able to deliver training. And I'm not saying that you need to be a trainer, but you must make sure that happens. I actually don't think all the time it's good for you in that role to do the training all the time. I actually like to have different people because people get used to, they can talk about the same thing, I think that that person could add the layer related to your organization, but it's always good to have different voices so that they get an appreciation. This is a global thing, this is a jurisdictional thing, why we need to care. Prepare and participate in regular regulatory visits. So I actually work for a company where they had compliance, but someone else used to do the report for them and reported when they had their meetings with central bank, which I thought was very weird. And I couldn't understand why the compliance didn't come, right? And they said, no, they're at this level. And I just, I didn't understand it. But now central bank is going to be meeting with compliance officers one-on-one. They said that last year. They used to meet with internal audit one-on-one. And they still do that, but now they can also meet with compliance. You have to report to the board, produce management reports. And so you could see by all these things, this significant responsibility. Just reporting to the board is huge because reporting is just not I prepare a report whenever you all need it, but I actually sit and discuss what the main points are, answer questions, and be able to articulate what the issues are that are facing our organization, the challenges, and what is our response. That's what is required now. I think a lot of people in the past got used to, okay, I just got to produce a report, give it to them, and then I walk away. But we're moving away from that. So, what the skills are now, skill set, because, you're all doing this course, so sometimes people think that, yeah, we need knowledge, understanding of our business. To me, that's number one. You're in a company, know what they're doing, how they do it, when they do it. If that means you have to go on a rotation and sit with the key people, do it. I have done it, and even where the company didn't have a program to do it, I requested, I say, do you mind? I just want to sit with all the senior people, get an understanding, so I understand the business. Especially as an executive, you should understand your organization. What do people do? When they talking, what they talking about? I don't like to be lost. So when you join organization, especially as a senior person, request that during the orientation. Do you mind? If just half hour I can schedule with all the senior people and they walk me through their responsibilities because it makes a difference. You must understand where your organization is vulnerable to money laundering and have these skills. Research, analytical, receptive, communication, you should be approachable, confident, and you should be decisive. I can't with this, decisive and confidence, that's to me big. So, clearly, paper is only one thing, so I get out. certificate and pass this course, but I got out with some of these other, not some, I think all of those skills are things that you should be developing if you are weak in any of those. So, MLRO must be a risk manager. So this going right back to some of those qualities. They should have authority, be independent and expertise, and they should add value to the organization. So oftentimes, organizations may pick you, but you make a decision that you're going to add value, because that's why they can keep you. So we talked about choice already. This just adding to that. So, of course, size and nature, what the scope is of your role, the products you have will impact the choice. The ability for the person to operate at senior level, I think that is critical. That is critical. People sometimes get promoted, and especially persons who've been in the organization a long time, they sit at the table and they are intimidated. Because these people, I used to report to them. Now I got to challenge them. Now I got to say some things in a meeting that they may disagree with. And that could be very intimidating. If all you're working like 20, 30 years, this was my boss. And I was Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. And now they saying Jackie. And I still don't, I watch people do, I sat in the board meeting that blew me away. And they were talking to this particular person, a senior person. And the person on the board asked him the question. He said, no, sir. Yes, ma'am. I just, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Right? Because it's just something about that. Tell me, no confidence. Right? Exactly. You know, I'm not saying that you can't be respectful, and if you're not comfortable, you're not going to say Rupert. But Mr. Roberts, understand this is the thing. But when you get into, yes, I just wanted to cringe, but that is not, no, that doesn't speak confidence, right? And then trust that the person gonna be able to make good decisions about information. It's very difficult to trust somebody when something blows up and they knew and they didn't report it, and you ask them why. Well, I wasn't sure, and you just like, that is not where we want to be with someone in a position where we really need to trust you to deliver and tell us what we need to know, good, bad, and different. And this is also the choice tells the regulator and external persons how serious you are about AML CFT. So if I see organization and they put a weak person in that position, I know they're serious, right? And I know they ain't thinking much about it. But when you see them really take the time, get someone of quality, and that person executing, I say, yeah, this person is serious. So in the Bahamas, the role is clearly defined because we have guidelines around it. You go on Central Bank site and FIU site. This person has to report to FIU. They must be registered with the applicable regulator. So Compliance Commission, Securities Commission, Insurance Commission, or Central Bank, or Gaming Board, whoever your regulator is. They must meet fit and proper guideline requirements, and they may be personally liable. So if you don't carry out the function, you could be personally liable and face jail time. And I think the liability is up to like 100,000. You go to jail for, I think, at least 5 to 10 years. So that stuff is serious. So I just have one slide after this, and then we're good. So some pitfalls, and you see it some of the people who have the roles, and it's very difficult. So lack of authority and access. So when you don't have the authority to ask for certain things, you have to go through someone else, or you are limited in the access you have. And this still happens, unfortunately, with access. Intimidation. So more senior members, the person is intimidated. This the other thing that I find common, lack of adequate resources, time, staff, and tools. Like the tools, because some organizations, they'll spend all kind of crazy money. Everybody get a phone, a laptop. I ask what y'all doing with it. Y'all don't need it. Spend money on things that really can help the organization. So, and I'm sure you can tell me most organizations have someone who buy the toys. Like they get whatever toy they want, but you need like, one person with equivalent to a toy. And you can't get that one person that might cost them 60,000. So this is, I find, common because they look at things in terms, most businesses, who making me money. So you got to sell your case for being the MLRO that I am adding value and I am saving you money, preventing loss to you, preventing sanctions. So make sure you hook me up too. I am, equipped the way I need to. Poor record keeping is also an issue. They don't have things at their disposal because they're just not keeping good records. Uncooperative staff and inadequate staff awareness. So those things make being the MLRO very challenging if you find yourself in any one of those. And oftentimes, and this is the reality, if you serve now as an MLRO, you are the first one. So if you're not the first MLRO for the organization, you inherited some of this stuff. So although you have all kind of great ideas, great tools, and you may be going to a job where you become the MLRO, you might have all these great ideas. Sometimes you got to clean up some of this before you can execute. So that's a reality. Because now we are in a much more mature environment where you're not starting from zero, you're inheriting some things. So that could also be a pitfall that I have not listed. And lastly, for us today, Unit 12, so this is a summary. So when we look at the MLRO position, we need to understand that this is a significant role and there are skills that we should be looking for and attributes for them to be effective. We just don't want to put someone there because Central Bank said you need an MLRO. And I think that was the thinking before. We need someone to put for that, so when they come, we could designate someone as an MLRO. And choosing MLRO is very key for your organization if you wanted to operate effectively, prevent or reduce some of the risks that you may face, and be aware of the pitfalls. I like to, although I've been in other roles in organizations, if I know the compliance MLRO sitting across from me, if I could assist them as another senior person, I try to do that because I understand that this stuff is real, and if they working effectively, that can help me. So I encourage you, even if you might not be that person, but if you see them and some of that stuff happening, you could be an advocate as well. So it's important to, as on the management team or the board, to understand the pitfalls so that you could overcome that in the organization so that you could be, effective. So that's it for us today. So I normally sign these slides. I have to look at the list. Everyone signed the list. I don't know where it is.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
In the Bahamas, are you able to indicate what is the compensation range for an MLRO? Of course, I know with a small organization, it would be much smaller versus the predecessors would be something much larger.
Not necessarily. It's based on risk, Compensation is not based on size, it's based on risk and complexity of what you are going to be looking at. Now, the funny thing in the Bahamas with the MLRO is that most times it's combined with compliance, and most times the money that is paid goes to the compliance person. And the MLRO, I find, if the positions are different, like if the MLRO and compliance is not the same, that the MLRO gets not a significant amount of money. Like you could have MLROs and they get 60,000, whatever. Not anything significant because the organization looking at it is so you are the MLRO because all you're dealing with is STRs. Anything else to do with AML, CFT is the compliance. So they tend to put more emphasis in terms of compensation, benefits, all that on the compliance than that will. And our legislation, unfortunately, kind of supports that the MLRO is this person that deals with STRs and you got to send it to, like they just the person who's signing off on the form.
But they person who's going to jail.
Yeah.
And I pay $100,000.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. But again, that's something, like I say, I look at it this way that, and when I served as compliance in MLRO, is that I negotiate. So if I take it on that risk, I need to negotiate. Now, when you have it combined, what you make is up to you. I know people who making, 200,000 plus. They get a bonus, yeah. Because the risk is there. I mean, there's no question whether you, not just locally, you could go to jail internationally. And one organization I worked for where I was quite real when I used to travel, I didn't take my business cards. They asked me where I work. I said I work at a bank. My boss in Geneva used to tell me when he traveled, he was the head of compliance globally. He told me, he said, he said, I don't like to go to the U.S. because they could tell me every hotel I went in, everything, and it was, for a time, it's not as bad now, but 6 people, they were like paranoid because they were holding their children who were in school. If they don't give information across, their children were prevented from leaving the U.S., and that's how all the UBSs and different organizations gave up information because the U.S. really used some tactics that were just oppressive. So, and I mean, I just was made aware of a situation, this is earlier this year, with a former colleague, and this person just retired, and they were going on vacation, and when they stepped off in Florida, they were stopped by the FBI, and they were told that in 2 weeks we need you to appear in federal court in New York. Okay? So when I tell you this stuff is real, it's real. And they, a situation involved what you call the third party independent manager. And they had to, the company they were part of had to call an attorney right away. The agents allowed him to go on vacation, but he was served a subpoena. And he had to appear in court, and they had to send, they were telling him it's on Nobel, and they had to send an attorney to his destination where he was going on vacation. So he spent some of his vacation sitting down preparing for this case to testify. But, and there's someone who just retired. This ain't someone who's serving. Okay? So that's why I say when you take on this risk. So for me, I took that stuff very real at the time, especially working for Swiss Bank. That you have to have that in the back of your mind. This is not free money, and make sure you're comfortable with what you're seeing. And I watch it in our environment now, and I see power plays happening and people going in position. I just be saying to myself, boy, I hope you know and you understand. Because, I mean, we're in a small place and things are happening at another level. And when the U.S. decided to do certain things, especially with regard to Bahamians, to go through foreign affairs first. A lot of people don't know that. Go through foreign affairs, Attorney General's office, so they have files there for Bahamians who they want. You just might know that yet. And so, stuff get out, and stuff coming down the pipe. And so, I don't, yeah. I take it's real responsibility. So you need to feel comfortable with what you're doing, what you're handling. And if they're excluding you from meetings, you've got to get in that room. because you could be liable, because you can't go to those people that like, no, you didn't pay right. Why do you think they paying you that? So that's what I think you have to look at risk when you get to pay, and you have to understand, could I handle this, and is this what I want to do? So I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. What's your question? Oh yeah, we're doing that. Some already, but that question will be before this starts. So we'll do that next class. Because I have all of them. Yeah. But you took time off it. Yeah, you too.
Yes. And we only got one of the.
Yes, trust me, I afterward, because that was a little blurry period for me.
Okay.
I said, oh geez. So I'll fix that.
Okay. The flag. She can read. We don't know if it open now, though.
You did, okay.
I had someone
Okay.
Let me ask you, piggybacking on that question. So, because I was asking now, because as an attorney, I anticipated some place would take in that experience.
Well, that's valuable to have, because when they have attorneys, the advantage to them is that the legal implications and where they may have to get a legal opinion.
And that is actually what I do.
Yeah, you have the advantage that you have that in-house, and they can give you a preview of, hey, this stuff, this could happen, versus someone who just has a compliance piece, and their position is more like, okay, this is what the law says.
What do you think what the law says?
And they could take you as far as this would be a breach. These are the you could be fined, you could go to jail, and it's there. Now, a lawyer could take you further to say this is a situation where they could appeal, or we have these other other risks, because we might not be able to just close somebody's account, right? Or we might not just be able to say X, Y, Z in public, because we could have liability.
Okay.
So those pieces, I find, I like to talk to an attorney, because if you didn't do a piece as prescribed, then that's opening for risk to the company.
Yeah.
And that's where you definitely, I've been there where we go on the phone, tell us.
Because I see plenty of gaps in that the legislation that proceeds crime, huh?
Yeah.
Plenty grounds for challenge.
Yeah. That was a rush to meet external requirements. And so, with regard to that, they just
Even like legal privilege and stuff, you can't just,
But some of that is unconstitutional.
That's what I'm saying. You can't just wipe away legal privilege and stuff like that. But it stands to tell somebody.
Challenges it.
Yeah.
But that's what people always say with money laundering. You're always looking for the test case. You don't want to be it, but
True,
there's always a test case. So, but salary, etc. I just say to people, look at, number one for me is risk. Number two is, what are you going to ask me to do? Because what am I walking into? I have been in organizations where, say, the person who was there, or they had a gap for maybe a couple months, they didn't have someone in the chair. So that already,
It's a
you know, that's a cleanup, right? Because that means you got to bring them up to date, because nobody was really doing it or committed to it. And then you have companies where they're trying to move from manual to automated to new system, and it didn't work, and they want you, oftentimes it's a fix.
Understood.
So I say ask what you want up front, because at the back end,
That's
sometime
true.
it might not come through.
Yeah, true.
So at least when I come, if you ask me for blood, you're done paying for it.
Understood.
But if you go along the way and say, oh, whatever you give me, and then you realize, but I
It was
hear,
much
and I,
more.
yeah, then it's harder to negotiate past that first day.
Fair.
You gotta wait a little while, build up your credits. They know, man, you good. I want them to leave, so I'm willing to pay some money,
Alright.
right? So it's always what you could live with. I don't worry, but what other people get or don't get, because I've been on jobs where I know, okay, I should get paid more, but I rather go in with low expectation,
Fair enough.
and then I exceed it, and then they come, well, she gonna leave, you know, she gonna leave. She ain't, because they ain't really paying on the sort of person getting paid, and she know that, and da. And then they do the right thing. And I have experienced that. And I rather them come to that. If they don't come to that, then they tell me about them.
Understood.
So,
Fair enough.
you know, you want people to be fair, but it's what you can live with.
I see what you're saying.
In a similar way, I mean, I'm a sole practitioner, and so I am looking at transitioning, coming out of law, perhaps going into compliance or something like that. But because the extent of my work is not necessarily dealing to that extent with those aspects, I'm only now learning it. I mean, you know it by coming in law, but when you physically get working with it, I'm not working in it. There's litigation, I don't necessarily need it, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at transitioning and trying to go into compliance, but then when I get all this responsibility, I'm questioning whether or not it's something that I really want to
But see,
go into.
again, the size and scale. You don't necessarily have to be in, say, in a large organization like a Commonwealth Bank. That's 600 people, multi-location. They are publicly traded. They doing insurance, investments. That is much more complicated. Or even say an offshore bank, like one that is like have all kinds of stuff going on to me. It's like a Delta or like a Colina. They like animals all by this, because they get all kind of pieces. So those organizations, if I was to go in an organization like that, I wouldn't necessarily want to go in the top position right away unless I'm moving from one to another that's similar. I would always want to go in where I'm part of a team, and I might be right under that person, so I can learn it. So while I'm sitting there learning the business, then I could decide, am I going to park? If I don't park there, then I'd have gotten enough industry experience to go somewhere else, probably not as big. So sometimes you just got to be strategic in how you transition into it, because some small places are not sophisticated enough to give you the right experience initially.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, because they like doing petty shop situation, and you doing the best in that. They don't really want to spend a whole heap of money, and then you find out, okay, these gaps, and you didn't know because they don't know and all this stuff. Those organizations tend to be better with someone who have experience to come and say, no, this would be doing, this is how we got to do it, da 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 da, right? But I find if you find like a mid-tier or top-tier company, if it's top-tier, you don't necessarily have to be in the position, but be in that area and build the experience and knowledge. Because that's where I find it to be incredibly useful. I have a friend, she works at Burma in their compliance, and she used to be in the bank. And she did compliance MRO, in one of the big banks, and she transitioned in. She said I was like a different world because gaming is very different, casinos, gaming, and now she is learning about money laundering, all that in that environment. So she said certain courses she can't even do here because we don't really offer it like that. She have to go to Vegas or wherever they offering it to get the experience, which she says, yeah, it's about to spar them off.
Yeah,
They have a team, so they trying to build up their Bahamian team. So that's why